Hi, my name is Ambrose, and today I will be discussing the evolution of colour in film. Colour is one of the most important elements in films we see today, with colour being able to portray emotions, set moods and tones, and create the extraordinary worlds that viewers can't help to fall in love with. In most films we see today, there is a wide range of vibrant and expressive colours filling the screen and mesmerising viewers. But film wasn't always this way. As I'm sure you're aware, there was a time before colour in film, where the screen was only black and white. Now the question is, how do films go from the old black and white films to the vivid use of colours we see in films now? But before we can dive into that, we must first address the precursor to colour in film, tinting. Hand tinting is the tactile method of altering traditional darkroom generated prints. Colorists use cotton swabs to manually apply pigments. While hand tinting was a technique originally used in portraits all the way back in the 12th century, it later appeared in Europe and Japan in the 1850s to 1900s to add colour to photographs. This went on to inspire filmmakers to also use this technique by hand tinting each individual frame to create a coloured film. The first film this technique was used in was Annabelle Serpentine Dance in 1895 from Edison Studios. Now, to go back and answer our original question, we have to go back to the very first piece of film. The first motion picture film is believed to be Louis Le Prince's Roundhay Garden scene. This film was recorded in England in 1888. It's roughly 2 seconds long and shows some of Louis Le Prince's family members walking around a garden. Little did they know while they were creating this historic but now somewhat primitive piece of film that only 20 years later in 1908, the first film in colour would be made. A Visit to the Seaside was the first film, or short film at least, to use colour. This was achieved with a kinemacolor process, an additive process operated with alternating red and green filters that were applied to the shutter in the front of the camera and in front of the projector. Although kinemacolor was a massive step in the evolution of colour in cinema, it was still far from perfect. One of the kinemacolor's many flaws was that it couldn't produce the colour blue, and this would later lead to kinemacolor's downfall, as part of the patent for the technique stated that it could produce all natural colours, but because it couldn't produce blue, the creators were sued and their company was liquidated. Even though kinemacolor went on to fail as a technique, it still paved the way for colour in film, and proved that there was a market for coloured films. This went on to inspire the next step of evolution, Technicolor. The first Technicolor company was founded in 1915, and was heavily influenced by kinemacolor, as it was also a two-color additive technique. The difference being that while kinemacolor required a tinted lens, Technicolor worked by projecting two strips of film, one of them being dyed red-orange and the other that had been dyed blue-green. When these two strips of film were projected together, it created a colored film. The first film to use this technique was The Toll of the Sea in 1922. The film, and therefore Technicolor, was an instant success, with it grossing over $250,000. Technicolor then refined their technique by adding a third strip of film. The most famous use of Technicolor, and arguably one of the most significant uses of colour in film, was The Wizard of Oz, which released in 1939. One of the things that made The Wizard of Oz stand out so much was not only its radiant, breathtaking use of colour to create the magical world of Oz come to life on the screen, but also due to the creative choice to start the film in black and white and then switch to colour when Dorothy goes to this magical world to create one of the most iconic contrasts ever seen in cinema. This contrast between black and white and colour is also a fantastic example and metaphor for the introduction of coloured films. Technicolor was relatively the same until 1941, when they introduced the monopack. The monopack was a technique that took the three separate strips of film from Technicolor and combining them into a single strip of film that could be loaded into any conventional camera. This gave Technicolor absolute control over colour in film, and this stayed the same until 1950, when Eastman color was first introduced. Eastman color was a derivative of Agfacolor, a German process from the mid-1930s. Eastman color managed to overcome Technicolor's monopoly over cinema purely by being an easier and more affordable option. Although Technicolor was a much richer and vibrant type of film, it was the affordability and ease of Eastman color that led to almost all films being shot in color by 1967. The next major development for colour in film wasn't until 1985, when digital colour was first introduced. Digitalised colouring of film first started by people taking old black and white films and colouring each individual frame on a computer. This technique started to get filmmakers thinking, and by 1998, Pleasantville, the first ever digitally produced coloured film, was released. From this point onward, the development of colour in film coincided with technological advancements, and by the 2000s, digital intermediary came into use. This was a process of scanning a film frame by frame on a computer so that it could be digitally manipulated and colour corrected. From here, computers and cameras started evolving to the point where now almost everything is shot and edited digitally, except for specific instances that will usually be a style choice, like Lahane or The Artist. From using white and black hats to signify heroes and villains, to the distinctive and breathtaking palettes used by directors like Wes Anderson today, colour has always played a significant part in film, and the addition of colour to film is arguably the biggest evolution in the history of cinema.